So today the topic of conversation is progressive overload. And one of the questions I've had quite frequently recently, and I absolutely love to see this because it means that people are really engaged and wanting to learn more about their programming, is that people want to understand why I'm programming the exercises that I'm choosing, why I'm choosing the rep range that I'm choosing. So be that 10 to 12 or 5 to 8 or whatever that looks like. And so I want to explain the concept of progressive overload. You're not going to walk away from this conversation being a fully qualified personal trainer, but you will have a clearer understanding as to how you can progress your own training when you finish working with us. So when I program a training load for somebody, it's generally based on their experience. I'll take lots of other things into account. So you might tell me that performance is your top goal, but you mightn't be sleeping well, or you might have a young baby at home, or your nutrition might not be really up to par. And so even though performance might be your top goal, it might be your eventual goal, you may not be at the point right now where doing high intensity, big volume workouts is going to actually help you to progress. So when I'm programming for somebody, I tend to take the bigger picture into account. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when you have two goals occurring at the same time. So let's say you want to build bone health and you want to develop your strength and prevent muscle loss, but you're also training for a marathon. Now, which one of those is going to require long-term maintenance and which one of those is going to require a really acute building phase? So in that instance, if you are going to run an event and it's coming up soon, you're going to need to prioritize recovery for your running event. So me putting together a massive load of strength training for you isn't really going to be productive in helping you to achieve that goal. So in that instance, we might down-regulate your strength training and just keep it at a maintenance phase. So you might be lifting lighter weights, your rep range might be more conducive to not coming to failure, and we'll explain that concept in a moment. But our priority can shift. Even though you might be doing a 12-week strength training program, your priorities within that program might shift to different things. So one week might be doing a bit of recovery and getting more sleep. Another week, you might be ramping things up and increasing the intensity of your workload. So that's the kind of foundational approach I take, is looking at the bigger picture and understanding what's happening in the background. Now, second of all, how many exercises you engage in is going to really depend on how much time you have available. Sometimes what I'll find is that I will plan 8 exercises for someone who says that they really want to focus on performance and they really want to engage in a strength training program. But that training takes an hour and 10 minutes and they don't have that kind of time in their day. And sometimes these people end up doing 20 to 25-minute training sessions more frequently rather than doing one big training session. So again, that's another factor. Your time availability is really important to factor in. Sometimes when we look at a training session that we know is going to take an hour, we are less inclined to engage in it because we know we don't have an hour to give and we have lots more things to do. We are not good at prioritizing ourselves and taking the time out to get to the gym. So I understand that. So for that reason, sometimes you might find that we have programmed 5 exercises for you and you might find it's kind of over quickly. And in that instance, instead of doing 3 rounds, you can engage in a 4th round if it's a circuit program, or you can engage in 4 sets of every exercise instead of 3 that are programmed. So let's talk now about sets, reps, intensity, and weight. Sets are the amount of times you're going to go through a series of exercises. So let's say I've programmed squats, bicep curls, and jumping jacks. Okay, I might suggest that you do 10 reps of each exercise. So that means you're going to do 10 squats, 10 bicep curls, and 10 jumping jacks. The sets you might do 10 squats 4 times. So that will be 4 multiplied by 10. That's how that's written down. 4 sets of 10 reps. then I might suggest you do 5 sets of 10 reps of the bicep curls and 10 sets of 10 reps of the jumping jacks, meaning you have 100 jumping jacks to do. In between each of those sets, I would expect you to have a rest. Now, the rest period is going to be determined by how hard you've worked during your set. So if I have suggested that you do 10 reps so that you lift the weight 10 times, and you're getting to number 8 and you're shaking like Bambi, your legs are quivering, you're really pushing out your 9th one, and then on your 10th rep, you fail. You can't lift the 10th one and you have to put the weight down. It's likely you're going to need a longer rest period of maybe 1 minute and 20 seconds in order to be productive in your next set. You'll know that you haven't rested long enough if you get to your next set, and even though you could lift 9 reps in your first set, you might only be able to lift 5 in your second set. So that's how you know you're not resting for long enough, and you can increase your rest period by an increment of 10 seconds. Now, ordinarily, I suggest people rest for about 45 seconds in between sets, unless we have programmed a superset. Now, what is a superset? A superset is where we pair 2 exercises together, and the purpose of this is to increase the intensity of your workout, to save time and make the workout more efficient, but also to allow us to pair one exercise with another so that your recovery period from the first exercise is active by working on the second exercise. So we're not necessarily letting your heart rate come all the way back down to baseline, but you're going to be able to rest the muscles that you've worked in the first round of exercises and alternate it with a different set of exercises. So let me give you an example. We might suggest that you superset a front squat with a seated overhead press. So that's where in the first round of exercises, you're going to be standing and you might be holding a kettlebell in front of you and squatting 10 times. And then you're going to sit down on a bench and you're going to get 2 kettlebells or 2 dumbbells, and you're going to do an overhead press. So while you're sitting down, you're working your upper body, your lower body is recovering, and you can immediately go back in to doing your front squat or whatever that exercise was, because then your upper body is recovering. So you're allowing the recovery period in between the two. It just allows you to save a little bit of time. You're getting an active recovery period. If you need to take a rest period in between the two, that's absolutely fine. But ideally in a superset, we're going straight from one exercise into the other. When you've finished your round of 2, you can take a rest and then move on to the next one. So the next thing I want to cover, that's sets and reps covered. So what we can do, another way we can increase intensity is to lift a heavier weight. We can also change time under tension. So again, there's another time under tension video. I'm going to attach it below this one so that you can have a look at that for yourself and maybe have a think about which exercises you could employ that modality into. And it's just another option for increasing the intensity or changing the intensity of your workout without necessarily increasing your weight load. So there's a couple of different ways you can overload yourself, or you can increase the workload or the progressive overload of a workout. You can change how many sets you do. So instead of doing 4 sets, you might do 5. Instead of doing 3 sets, you might do 4 of a specific exercise. You can change the rep range. So you might find that a lot of your exercises are programmed 10 to 12 reps. That's muscle hypertrophy. So what we're trying to do, that's the muscle hypertrophy range. So what we're trying to do there is grow lean muscle. And we want to grow the size of lean muscle because for many of you, you want to be able to see the effect of your training. So we can work in that hypertrophy range. And let's say if you're going to lift 12 reps and you're going to do some bicep curls, you might have 6 kilos or 10 kilos, whatever that might be, in each hand. And you'll go and you lift 10 kilos and you'll get to your 10th one and you'll be shaking near to failure, and then you'll put your weights down. We can change the intensity by suggesting you go for 15 reps. So you might need to drop the weight a little. You might need to go from 10 kilos to an 8 kilo dumbbell in order to achieve 15 reps. Equally, you could do something called a drop set. So you could pick up your weight and lift your 10 kilos for your 9 or 10 reps. And when you start to falter, you can drop those, pick up a lighter weight and do the last 5 reps with the lighter weight. So again, that's what we call a drop set. And we're increasing the intensity and overloading you here because we're getting you to the point of almost failure, and then we're forcing you to continue through it. So you're likely to be a bit sore after a session like this where you've worked to failure. You're likely to have those kind of DOMs, 2 days after your training session, and feel a little bit more sore. So again, when we look at this type of intensity in a session, we don't generally pair that with like an upper body session like that with somebody who's going to go swimming the following day, because you may not do your best in your swimming training after training like that during a session. Now, another thing we can do is change our body position. We can change our hand position, for example. If you're going to do a chin up and your hands are facing you, your palms are facing you, this is going to be easier than a pull up. And again, if we're going wider, that's going to be much harder. It's engaging our lats more. So there's lots of different ways that through body position, through our rep range, through our sets, and of course, increasing weight. Now, you can do the same exercises week on week on week. And each week, what we'll ask you to do is increase the weight you're utilizing. So you can be doing the same exercises every week and still progressing, but you've got to be doing something to change or shift the intensity of your workout. One of those things might be to increase your weight load. So for example, week 1 of a program, let's go back to the squat. Week 1 of a program, you might find yourself squatting just the bar, 20 kilos. And you might find after that you can put on 1 kilo bumper plates or 1 kilo small plates. And that's fine. If you're going to increase your load by 2 kilos a week, that's absolutely fine. It's usually as your weight goes up that the increases are going to be minuscule. When we're doing things like a bicep curl, you might find yourself doing 6s first, and you'll get to moving on to 8s and you'll really struggle with the additional weight. And it's not that the additional weight is not doable, it's just for a short period of time. In order for you to break through that barrier of increasing your strength load, you're going to perhaps need to do that drop set that we spoke about, or go to a shorter rep range. So let me explain this one. You may find in your training programming that for a good few weeks, you'll have rep ranges of 10 to 12 or 8 to 10. And then bang in the middle, you might find that you've got 2 or 3 weeks where some of the exercises are only 5 to 8. And you might be wondering to yourself, why is she making me do less work here? Does that make any sense? Is that going to make me progress in any way? The idea would be that when you see 5 to 8 reps, you're going to change the weight you lift so that it's appropriate for the rep range you're utilizing. So let's say, again, let's go back to that bicep curl. Let's say you're using 10 kilo dumbbells for your bicep curl and you're doing 10 reps with those and you're getting to 10 and you're kind of faltering. I want you to consider picking up the 12 kilo dumbbells and trying to do 5 reps with those 12 kilos and see what it feels like. So if you have to do a smaller amount of reps, the weight is going to go up, and you might think about doing them a little bit more slowly and be really cognizant of the technique you're using. So anytime we go up in weight, we want to be really conscious of technique. We don't want to be just swinging the weights around. Don't try to fly through the exercise and just get it done as quickly as possible. There's a time and a place in a conditioning workout for things like that. But when we're doing weight training and we're looking to build muscle, we want to really focus on the muscles we're using. Now remember guys, if there are any exercises that you have difficulties with, if you're finding any of them confusing, or if anything in this conversation has been confusing, please don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions. Even if it feels like it's a silly question, or, you know, oh God, I should know this. Please don't think that I expect you to understand everything of what I've said here today. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Just to recap very quickly, progressive overload can be achieved in a number of different ways. Number one, you can work the same muscles but change the type of exercise you do. So for example, you might go from a front squat to a back squat. So you're just changing the balance, you're changing where the load is placed, and so your body has to adapt to that. You might go from doing an inchworm crawl to doing a loaded handstand, so with your knees on a box and your hands underneath your shoulders. And then you might do an overhead press. So all of these are working the same muscles, but we're doing it in a kind of a dynamic fashion. We're changing the type of exercise that we're utilizing to work those muscles in a different plane. Another way of changing overload, or creating that overload principle, is to change your weight, change your set or your rep range, change your body position, as we said. You can do your exercises faster, you can slow them right down. So that's that time under tension principle. Again, I will put the link to that video underneath this one. And I think that's it. If you have any questions on all of that, please don't be afraid to ask. We can chat about it in the group next week, and we can go a little bit deeper into how we program exercises, if that's something you'd like to hear about.